In a quiet American town called Maple Creek, nestled in a valley that seemed to catch the sun just so, there lived a boy named Tommy Gray. The time was one where the world was turning on the cusp of a new century, but in Maple Creek, life moved at the gentle pace of a horse drawn cart. Tommy, 10 years old with a shock of unruly brown hair and knees perpetually scuffed, was a lively child, a whirlwind of boundless energy. He was known among the villagers not just for his cheerful laugh, which echoed through the town square, but for the blur of his quick steps as he chased after anything that caught his fancy, a stray dog, a rolling hoop, or the shadow of a passing cloud. His pockets were a chaotic treasury, rattling with the smooth, cool weight of river stones, the clink of prize marbles, a tangled mess of string for indeterminate future projects, and the occasional forgotten cookie. But inside his heart, shielded from the dust and grime of boyhood adventures, lived a greater, quieter treasure, an insatiable love for stories. Books were a scarcity in Maple Creek. Most homes, including Tommy's, held a well-thumbed Bible on the mantelpiece and an almanac hanging by a string near the hearth, its pages filled with predictions for weather and planting. The little schoolhouse library was more of a closet, curated by the stern and spectacled Mrs. Gable, who believed books were to be respected from a distance and were often kept under lock and key. For Tommy, whose imagination stretched far beyond the white picket fences and rolling hills of his town, every new book was a key, a secret map, a door swinging open into a world he could otherwise never know. He would read the labels on medicine bottles and the advertisements on cracker tins, hungry for any new arrangement of words. One bright morning in late spring, the air sweet with the scent of lilac, the town's children gathered in the sprawling meadow behind the church. The grass was a vibrant green carpet, perfect for games of tag and marbles. Tommy, fresh from a victory in a stone skipping contest at the creek, saw his friend Samuel Harding sitting apart from the others under the shade of a great oak. Samuel was a quieter boy, more thoughtful and deliberate than Tommy, and in his hands he held a worn but precious-looking book. Its leather cover was the color of rich soil, scuffed by time and use, its corners frayed like an old trusted coat. Yet, in Tommy's eyes, it shone with a light more valuable than gold. "What's that you have, Sam?" Tommy asked, plopping down beside him, his curiosity bubbling over. Samuel looked up, a proud smile on his face. "It's my father's," he said. "I'm old enough to read it now." He held it out for Tommy to see. The title was embossed in faded gold leaf, The Mariner's Compass. "Tales of the Sea," Samuel explained, his voice hushed with reverence, "of great white whales and shipwrecks in the Indian Ocean. It tells of sailors battling storms that could snap a mast like a twig, of facing down pirates in the Caribbean, and of discovering islands where no man had ever set foot." Tommy felt his heart leap with a fierce, yearning excitement. He could almost smell the salt in the air, feel the spray of the ocean on his face. He pictured himself high in a crow's nest, shouting "Land ho!" at the sight of a distant shore. He longed to hold the book, to let its stories wash over him, to step into the grand adventures it promised. Could I borrow it, Sam?" Tommy asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Just for a day. I'll be ever so careful." Samuel hesitated. He looked from Tommy's eager face to the precious book. "My father told me this book is older than he is. He said that books, like good friends, must be treated with the utmost care. They must never be neglected or harmed, for they hold the wisdom and dreams of those who came before us." "I promise," Tommy said, his eyes wide and sincere. He placed a hand over his heart in a gesture of solemn gravity. "I'll guard it with my life." Seeing the desperate longing in his friend's eyes, Samuel relented. He carefully passed the book to Tommy. The weight of it felt substantial, important. The leather was smooth and cool beneath his fingers. Tommy opened it to a random page and saw an intricate drawing of a three-masted schooner, its sails billowing in an unseen wind. He was already lost. That night, after the supper dishes were cleared and his chores were done, Tommy excused himself to his small attic room. By the flickering, gentle light of a single candle, he opened The Mariner's Compass. The world of Maple Creek, the chirping of crickets, the distant bark of a dog, the creak of the floorboards below, faded into nothing. The printed words became a living sea. He was no longer Tommy Gray in his small room, but a cabin boy on the deck of a mighty vessel, the tang of salt on his tongue and the roar of the ocean in his ears. He battled a kraken in the icy northern depths, navigated by stars in the vast Pacific, and listened to the old boatswain's tales of mermaids and ghost ships. His mother's call for sleep from the bottom of the stairs was a distant echo, pulling him from a world far more real than his own. "Tommy, Blow out that candle now. With a sigh of deep reluctance, he marked his page with a blade of grass and closed the cover. He blew out the flame, plunging the room into darkness, but the adventures followed him into his dreams, where waves crashed against the walls of his small room. The next day dawned warm and impossibly bright. Tommy's first thought was of the book, and he read a chapter before breakfast, gulping down the story along with his milk. But the sun climbing in the sky was an invitation. From his window, he could hear the laughter and shouts of his friends gathering in the meadow. A game of stickball was starting, and the crack of the bat against the ball was a siren's call to his restless energy. With play tugging at his mind, he looked at the book. He couldn't possibly take it to the rough and tumble game. He would leave it here, safe. He carried it outside into the yard and set it carefully upon a weathered wooden bench under the apple tree, thinking it would be perfectly fine until he returned. He gave it one last loving glance, then ran off to join his friends, his promise to Samuel already fading behind the immediate thrill of the game. He was soon lost in the joy of running, hitting, and shouting with his friends, forgetting everything but the flight of the ball against the blue, endless sky. He didn't notice, as the hours passed, the subtle shift in the air. He didn't see the thin, wispy clouds on the horizon begin to gather and thicken, their white edges turning a bruised, ominous grey. By mid-afternoon, the first fat drop of rain struck his cheek, then another. The wind rose with a sudden moan, carrying with it the smell of wet earth and ozone. The sky, clear at first, had staged a rebellion. A sudden clap of thunder rattled the church steeple, and the heavens opened. Tommy, deep in the exhilarating chaos of a tied game, suddenly froze. A cold dread, far more chilling than the rain, washed over him. The book. His heart hammered against his ribs. He turned and dashed across the field, his friends' questioning shouts lost in the growing roar of the storm. His shoes splashed through newly formed puddles, the cold water soaking his socks. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead and streamed into his eyes, blurring his vision. When he reached the bench, his worst fear had become a devastating reality. The book was a sodden, tragic thing. It was drenched through, its proud leather cover stained dark and sagging. Water dripped from its pages, which were swollen and clung together in a pulpy mass. The ink on some pages had begun to bleed, turning the elegant script into blurry, unreadable smudges. In desperation, he clutched it to his chest and ran inside, leaving a trail of muddy water on the kitchen floor. He tried to dry it by the hearth, carefully separating the delicate pages, but the heat made them crinkle and warp. He pressed the book under a heavy stack of his father's ledgers, hoping to smooth the pages, but when he checked an hour later, the damage was irreversible. The once crisp pages were wrinkled and brittle, a permanent scar of his carelessness. It would never be the same. That evening, guilt weighed on Tommy's young heart like a physical stone. He couldn't eat, couldn't speak. Every creak of the house sounded like an accusation. A dozen cowardly thoughts troubled him. He could hide the book, pretend he'd lost it. He could say a sudden gust of wind had blown it into a puddle, an accident beyond his control. He could even avoid Samuel altogether until the memory faded. Yet none of these paths offered him a shred of peace. They all felt like lies. And lies felt like a different kind of stain, one that would ruin him on the inside just as the rain had ruined the book on the outside. At last, watching the last light of day fade from his window, he knew that the only honest path, the only one that wouldn't make him ashamed to look at his own reflection, was confession, however painful it would be. With slow, heavy steps, he walked to Samuel's house, clutching the ruined book tightly against his chest as if it were a fallen bird. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and smelling of rain-soaked soil, a stark contrast to the turmoil in his soul. He knocked on the door, and it was Samuel's father, Mr. Harding, who answered. Mr. Harding was a carpenter, a stern yet kind man with sawdust in the lines of his hands and eyes that saw more than most. He was respected in the town for his steady hand and his honest dealings. He saw the ruined book in Tommy's grasp and the sorrow etched on the boy's face, and his expression softened slightly. He simply stepped aside and gestured for Tommy to enter. Samuel was in the parlor, and his face fell when he saw the warped and wrinkled state of his beloved book. But before he could speak, Tommy, his voice trembling, began his confession. His eyes brimmed with tears as he explained everything, his excitement, his carelessness, his desperate and failed attempts to fix his mistake. He spared himself no blame. Mr. Harding listened in silence, his gaze steady. When Tommy finished, his head bowed in shame. Mr. Harding placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Look at me,
Son,
Tommy hesitantly lifted his tear-streaked face. You have made a grievous mistake. Tommy, Mr. Harding said, his voice low but not unkind. You let pleasure cloud your judgment and you broke a solemn promise. This book is damaged, and that is a sad thing indeed. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. But a mistake, though painful, only becomes a failure if we learn nothing from it. Tonight, you had many choices. You could have hidden your mistake, or you could have told a lie to cover it. You chose the hardest path. You chose the truth. He took the damaged book from Tommy's hands and examined it. A damaged book can sometimes be repaired, or, if not, it can be replaced. But trust, once it is broken, is the hardest thing in this world to mend. By coming here tonight, you have begun to mend it already. Tommy bowed his head again, feeling the profound truth of those words settle deep into his heart. He offered to do any work, any chores, for as long as it took to pay for a new book. Mr. Harding agreed, setting him the task of helping stack lumber in his workshop every Saturday for the next 2 months. The story of Tommy's mistake and his immediate honest confession spread quietly through Maple Creek, as stories do. Neighbors spoke of it not to shame him, but to praise his courage. It was a lesson for the children and a reminder for the adults. Over time, people began to trust Tommy in a new way. He was no longer just the cheerful, energetic boy, but one who could be counted on, one who valued his word. Mrs. Gable, hearing the tale, even offered Tommy the responsibility of dusting the books in the school library, granting him access to the stories he so craved. Tommy never forgot the feel of that ruined book in his hands. The experience carved a lesson into his soul deeper than any story he would ever read. He learned that the respect of his friends and neighbors was worth more than any possession, and that every borrowed thing, be it a book or a promise, carried with it the invisible, sacred weight of honor.